The palace gates were supposed to be calm that morning. Routine, predictable, the kind of quiet moment Catherine often cherished. But everything shattered the instant a royal guard stepped forward and fell to one knee before her. Not in ceremony, not in duty, but in trembling urgency. His voice cracked as he whispered truth so heavy it seemed to freeze the courtyard mid-breath, and within seconds the royal family realized. This wasn't a gesture of respect. IT was a warning, one that could change everything. If this moment already has you wondering what on earth could make a trained royal guard break protocol so dramatically, you're in the right place. Stick around, and before we dive deeper, tap like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who loves royal stories as much as you do. It helps the channel grow, and it means I can bring you more powerful stories just like this one. The morning had begun with the kind of calm that feels almost scripted. Soft light brushing the palace walls, a faint chill carried by the breeze, and a courtyard that echoed only with the rhythmic steps of guards changing shifts. Catherine had always appreciated mornings like this. They reminded her of normality, of balance, of the quiet she rarely got to enjoy. As her car approached the palace gates, she expected just another routine arrival, a few polite nods, a brief exchange of smiles. Nothing unusual. But sometimes, life rearranges itself in the split second between expectation and reality. The moment the car rolled to a stop, she sensed it. Something was off. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was the stillness. A stillness too heavy, too exact, almost as if the entire courtyard were holding its breath. Royal guards were trained to be statues. Yes, but this was different. They stood a little too rigid. Their gazes lingered a bit too long. And there was an unspoken tension in the air, the kind that prickled the skin before the mind even understood why. Kate stepped out, adjusting the sleeve of her coat. She gave the guards her usual warm nod, the one that melted tension on most days, but today it barely stirred the surface. One guard in particular caught her eye. He wasn't the tallest. He wasn't the oldest. But something about his posture pulled her attention immediately. His grip on his ceremonial rifle was tight, almost strained. His eyes flickered when she looked his way, as though fighting an inner command he wasn't ready to obey. At first, she assumed he was new. Nerves were expected. But nerves didn't usually carry this much weight. The officer in charge stepped forward to greet her, offering a rehearsed welcome. But even his voice felt thinner than usual. Catherine felt again that subtle pressure in the air, like a storm silently rearranging clouds far beyond the horizon. She walked toward the entrance, and that's when it happened. From the corner of her eye, she saw a movement. Quick, decisive, but trembling around the edges. The guard with a strained grip stepped forward, breaking rank. A violation so severe it would normally result in immediate disciplinary action. But the courtyard didn't shout. It didn't react. Instead, every guard froze harder, as if carved deeper into marble. The guard kept walking. 5 steps. 4. 3. His boots clicked against the stone with a sharpness that echoed across the courtyard. Catherine stopped, turning fully toward him. The officer beside her stiffened, his hand twitching toward caution. But even he didn't call out. Not yet. Something about the guard's expression made everyone hesitate. It wasn't rebellion. It was desperation held together by discipline. Then, in a sight no one at the palace could remember seeing in any living generation, the guard dropped to one knee. The world seemed to stop with him. Guards didn't kneel. Not to royals. Not during duty. Not in any circumstance outside ceremonial tradition. And certainly not alone, unprompted, unscripted. This was more than a broken protocol. It was a fracture in the foundation of palace order. His helmet dipped as he lowered his head, shoulders trembling ever so slightly. Kate's breath caught, not out of fear, but out of instinctive empathy. Whatever was compelling him must have been crushing. The officer finally snapped out of his shock and stepped forward. Guardsmen, remain in position. But the guard lifted his head just enough to glance at the officer, and with a steadiness that surprised everyone, he said, "No, sir, not today." The courtyard fell into a deeper silence. Kate stepped closer, not with caution, but with a quiet confidence that defined her. "It's all right," she said softly. "Take your time." Her voice was gentle, but the guard reacted like it carried weight he had waited years to acknowledge. He lifted his gaze fully now, and his eyes, dark, wet, unguarded, met hers directly. It was the first time anyone saw the truth. This man was on the edge of breaking. "Your Royal Highness," his voice cracked, then steadied. "Please forgive the breach of protocol. I had to do this. Today of all days." Kate's brows softened. "Why today?" His hand trembled as he reached slowly, very slowly, into the inner pocket of his uniform. The other guards tensed instantly, but he moved with deliberate clarity, showing his palm first, making sure everyone understood he wasn't a threat. When he pulled out the object, the tension didn't ease. It deepened. It was a folded piece of fabric. Old, worn, carefully preserved. Kate recognized it immediately, not by seeing it before, but by the emotion radiating from him. People didn't hold on to fabric like that unless it carried memory, history, or grief. The guard swallowed hard. "This belonged to her," he whispered, "to Princess Diana." The air shifted. Even the officer's stern facade cracked. Kate froze, not in shock, but in a feeling that wasn't easy to name. A blend of respect, curiosity, and a sudden, sharp ache she felt on William's behalf. The guard continued, his voice growing steadier, as if the truth itself were giving him strength. "I wasn't supposed to keep it. Regulation said everything from the crash site had to be cataloged and archived. But this never made it. I took it. I protected it. Because I made her a promise." Kate's heart dropped. "A promise? To Princess Diana?" she asked softly. The guard nodded, eyes glistening even beneath the shadow of his helmet. "I was a new recruit, barely 20. She spoke to me once, just once, during a charity visit. She said something I never forgot." His voice faltered again. "If you ever see someone hurting, step forward. Don't wait for permission." Kate felt the weight of those words settle into her chest. They sounded exactly like Diana, gentle, human, fiercely compassionate. The guard looked down at the fabric in his hands as if it were a sacred relic. "I kept this because I believed one day someone would need to hear the truth, someone who could carry her spirit forward." Slowly, he extended the folded cloth toward Kate. "For years, I didn't know who that person was," he said. "But then you came, and I saw the way you look at people, the way you listened, the way you cared. And I knew." Kate swallowed hard, her eyes burning with emotion she didn't try to hide. He raised his head fully. "Your Royal Highness, it belongs with you." The courtyard, the entire palace, it felt exhaled at once. Kate stepped closer, accepting the fabric with both hands, as though touching something fragile and alive. She didn't speak immediately. She didn't need to. The guard's confession had created a moment so raw, so honest, that silence felt respectful. But then she did speak, softly, but with a certainty that sent warmth through the air. "Thank you," she said, "for keeping her memory safe, for honoring her, and for stepping forward just as she asked." The guard bowed his head again, but not in protocol, in relief. And for the first time that morning, the palace gates didn't feel quiet. They felt awake. For a long moment after Catherine accepted the folded piece of fabric, the courtyard stood wrapped in an unusual quiet. Not the cold formality of royal grounds, but a respectful stillness, as if everyone instinctively understood that something sacred had just been set in motion. Catherine held the cloth gently, her fingers brushing over its age-softened fibers. She could feel the history inside it, the weight of a story that had waited far too long in the shadows. The guard who had knelt was still breathing unevenly, the emotional strain tugging at his composure. Yet the moment Kate looked up at him, he straightened, trying to hold himself together with what dignity he had left. "What was the promise?" she asked softly. "The one you made to her." The guard inhaled slowly, steadying himself, and what followed was not simply a confession. It was a release. "I never meant to become part of history," he began. "I was only expected to stand still, keep watch, and do what I was told. But then there was Diana." He paused, eyes drifting to the courtyard stones, as if seeing a different time entirely. "It was the summer of '95, he continued. "She was visiting the children's wing of St. George's Hospital. I was assigned to her security perimeter. Only temporary, a fill-in for an officer who had fallen ill. I'd never met a royal before. I was nervous, probably sweating through my uniform. A brief, rueful smile cracked across his face. But she noticed. She always noticed. Kate listened closely, her expression softening with every word. She came over to me after leaving one of the children's rooms. I didn't expect her to speak. She didn't need to, but she stopped right in front of me and said, "You're doing well. Thank you." The kind of simple kindness people rarely think twice about. He swallowed. But to someone like me, back then it meant everything. The officer in charge shifted, his posture less rigid now. Even he couldn't hide that the guard's story was touching him. She asked my name. The guard continued. No royal had ever asked that before. Not out of duty, out of curiosity, out of care. He paused, emotion thickening his voice. "If you see someone hurting," she told me, "step forward, even if protocol tells you to stay still." Kate nodded slowly, the truth of Diana's compassion living freshly in her mind. "I thought she meant it as a metaphor," the guard said, "or just a comforting phrase." But then he hesitated. Even the breeze seemed to pause. 2 years later, the crash happened. Kate's heart clenched. She knew the story. Everyone did. But hearing the perspective of someone who had been there, someone who had felt the shock to the uniform on his back, was different. "I was stationed at Kensington Palace the night the news arrived," he said quietly. "We weren't prepared. Nobody was. The officers rushed out. Some shouted. Others cried. And some of us, we just stood there, frozen, like the world had been kicked out from under us." Kate felt tears prick the back of her eyes. She knew how William had been affected, but she rarely heard accounts from those who had stood watch over Diana, day after day, year after year. When her personal belongings were returned, the guard said, "We were instructed to sort and log everything before it was taken into storage. Uniform staff, including me, were assigned to assist. It was clinical, procedural, but every item felt like a heartbeat." He paused, the memory overwhelming him. "And then I found this." His gaze flicked briefly to the folded cloth in Catherine's hands. It was tucked into a leather notebook of hers, a handkerchief she carried during hospital visits. There was makeup on one corner, dried tears on another. It wasn't meant to be archived like an object. It was human. It was her. Kate exhaled shakily. "I held it," he said, voice barely holding steady. "And I remembered her words. If you ever see someone hurting, step forward." So I made a decision. A foolish decision to some, perhaps, but to me it felt like the only right one. He lifted his chin with surprising resolve. I took it. The officer flinched, but Kate held up a gentle hand to keep the moment calm. "I didn't steal it out of disloyalty," the guard said. "I kept it because I believed, truly believed, that one day someone would need it. Someone who could carry her compassion forward. Someone who would understand not just the symbol, but the promise." The air thickened. Kate felt her heartbeat deepen. "I watched every royal engagement for years," he went on. "I saw William grow. I saw Harry serve. But it wasn't until you came into the family that I recognized the same quiet strength, the same instinct to walk toward people, not away, the same ability to listen before speaking." Kate's expression softened deeply, her chest warming with humility she rarely voiced aloud. "And every year," he admitted, "I wonder whether I misjudged my mission, whether the day would ever come, whether Diana's last handkerchief would simply die with me, hidden in the back of my wardrobe." He looked at her with fierce sincerity. "But when I watch you comfort that grieving mother last month, the way you place your hand on her arm, the way you spoke to her child, I felt something click, a clarity I can't explain. I knew then that the time had come, and I knew today was the day I had to step forward." Kate blinked back tears. "Why today, specifically?" His breath trembled. "Because today," he hesitated, steadying himself, "marks the anniversary of the first time Diana spoke to me, and I felt she deserved to be remembered not with silence, but with courage." The courtyard shifted. Emotion washed through the space like a warm tide, softening every hardened edge. "I broke protocol," he said quietly. "Because she told me to?" "Not literally, of course." But through that one sentence she gave me, that one piece of guidance that shaped my entire life." He looked at Kate, his eyes shining. "And when I saw you today, I knew she would have wanted you to have this, to carry her kindness forward, not as a symbol of grief, but as a reminder that compassion survives." Catherine pressed the folded cloth against her chest, as though shielding something precious. "That wasn't a breach of duty," she whispered. "It was devotion." For the first time since kneeling, the guard broke, tears sliding down slowly, silently. He didn't bow. He didn't apologize. He simply breathed out years of weight. Kate stepped closer and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You honored her," she said softly, "and I promise we will honor you for stepping forward." The guard exhaled shakily, his shoulders finally easing. And somewhere in that moment, the palace gates didn't feel like boundaries at all. They felt like the beginning of a long-awaited truth. Chapter 2 complete. Shall I continue to Chapter 3? Shockwaves to the palace, 1,000 words. Is this conversation helpful so far? Word of the guard's confession did not drift quietly through the palace. It moved like a sudden gust, subtle at first, then unstoppable. By the time Catherine stepped inside with the folded cloth held gently in her hands, senior staff members were already exchanging uncertain glances, whispering in corners, unsure whether to sound an alarm or remain silent. No royal guard, especially a veteran, behaved like that without a reason, and no object tied to Princess Diana resurfaced without sending tremors through the royal corridors. William was in one of the smaller briefing rooms when an aide rushed in, his face pale, voice shaky. "Your Royal Highness, there's been an incident at the gates." Before the man could finish, William's instincts kicked in. He knew the tone. He knew the weight behind words that hadn't yet formed. "Is Catherine safe?" he asked sharply. "She's unharmed, sir, but there's something else." A guard. He stepped forward. He kneeled, and he spoke of your mother. William froze, not because he feared danger, but because the past had a way of walking back into the room without knocking. He inhaled deeply, steadying himself. "Where is she now?" "In the East Hall, sir." William moved quickly, long strides echoing off the polished floors. The palace interior had always calmed him. The golden light, the familiar portraits, the muted footsteps of staff. But today, the air felt charged, almost trembling with anticipation. Something had shifted outside, and he could feel its echo in the walls. He found Catherine standing near a tall window, sunlight spilling over her hair like a soft halo. She wasn't crying, but her expression carried the weight of someone who had just touched a ghost. "Kate?" he said gently as he approached. She turned, offering him a small, soft smile, the kind she used when something meaningful happened and words felt too small. She held out the folded cloth. "William, it's hers." He looked at it, really looked. His breath left him in one sharp, silent exhale, not dramatic, not loud, but the kind of breath that cracks something inside a person. He took the cloth, fingers brushing the delicate fibers. They felt fragile, yet stubbornly alive with history. "Where did this come from?" he asked, though his voice wasn't demanding. It was searching. Kate explained everything. The stillness at the gate, the guard stepping forward, the kneeling, the confession, the promise made decades ago. As she spoke, William listened in complete silence. Not cold silence, but the stillness of someone absorbing a truth that sat far too close to the heart. His jaw tensed, not with anger, but with emotion he fought to keep composed. When she finished, William stared at the cloth again. "She carried this," he murmured, "during visits after difficult days." He didn't have to guess. He just knew. Some memories live deeper than thought. Kate touched his arm gently. He felt she'd want you, or us, to have it. He believed it wasn't meant to stay hidden. William closed his eyes briefly. She wouldn't have wanted something human to be archived like a statistic. There was a long pause before he asked, "Where's the guard now?" "In the command room," she said softly. "They're deciding what to do." William straightened. He isn't to be punished. But protocol. "Protocol can wait," he said gently but firmly. "A man held onto a piece of my mother's memory for decades. That isn't disobedience. That's loyalty. Kate nodded, relief flickering across her face. But not everyone in the palace shared that sentiment. Down the corridor, King Charles was being briefed as well. And unlike William, Charles's reaction was complex, layered with history, duty, and the weight of decades spent managing the delicate narrative around Diana. Charles rubbed his forehead slowly as the aide spoke. A guard stepped forward. Before Catherine, his tone was calm, but his eyes sharpened. Yes, sir. He claims to have safeguarded an item belonging to the late princess. Charles exhaled, long and thoughtful. And the press? They don't know yet. Make sure that remains the case. He stood, adjusting his cufflinks, an old habit he fell into when unsettled. Where's Catherine now? In the East Hall, sir, with the Prince of Wales. Charles nodded and walked toward them, each step deliberate. His personal relationship with Diana was a subject wrapped in shadows, misunderstandings, and years of public scrutiny, but there was no denying the impact she continued to have on the family, even decades later. The reappearance of something so personal was bound to stir everything again. When Charles entered the hall, William and Kate turned respectfully. The king looked at the cloth in his son's hands and paused. His expression tightened for a single second, then softened into something difficult to read. So, he said quietly, it's real. William nodded. It appears so. Charles's eyes flicked briefly with memory. Not regret, not pain, but the complex mixture of both. Your mother, she always had a way of leaving echoes behind. Kate stepped forward gently. The guard said she spoke to him once, that she told him to step forward if someone was hurting. Charles let out a faint exhale, almost a laugh, almost a sigh. Yes, that sounds like her. William watched his father closely. He kept this for years, he added, believing it would matter one day. Charles didn't speak immediately. He looked toward the window, where guards stood outside in their strict formation. Loyalty takes many forms, he said finally. Not all of them fit neatly within the rules of the palace. Kate felt the tension ease slightly. But just as the room seemed to settle, another wave of consequences arrived. An aide hurried in, breathless. Your Majesties, it appears some footage of the guard kneeling has been captured by a tourist. It's already circulating online within minutes. William lifted his head sharply. How widespread? Growing quickly, sir. People are already questioning whether something serious happened at the gate. Charles closed his eyes. Of course. Kate felt a swirl of dread. The moment had been intimate, human, but online, moments were rarely given context. History was often shaped by headlines, not truth. We need to act, William said, before speculation twists this into something it isn't. Charles nodded, his leadership instinct kicking into place. Issue a brief statement acknowledging an emotional exchange took place. No details yet. We must protect the guard before he becomes a headline. Kate looked between them. And what about him? William answered immediately. We speak with him personally. Today. The king agreed. Within minutes, the small group walked toward the command room. Staff members stiffened as they passed, not out of fear, but out of instinctive reverence. Rarely did the Prince and Princess of Wales walk through the palace with such unified urgency. Even more rarely did the king himself follow behind them. Inside the command room, the guard sat on a bench, hands clasped together, shoulders tight. When the door opened and he saw who entered, not just William and Kate, but the king, he shot to his feet instantly. Sire, your royal highnesses, I apologize, I never meant to. Charles raised a calming hand. No need. Sit. The guard hesitated, then obeyed. The universe held its breath. A broken planet floated in silence, its sky cracked with fire and ash. On that ruined surface stood the last human soldier, Han Min-jae, his suit torn, his lungs burning, his mind screaming to stand just one more time. Above him, the enemy appeared. Not ships, not soldiers, but the Asterian pantheon. Ancient giants of living light, worshipped as gods by dying galaxies. Their armor shone like newborn stars. Their voices vibrated through the bones of the world. The High Lord, Corvith, stepped forward. Human, he said, his voice echoing like thunder across centuries. Kneel. Your little species ends today. Min Jae wiped the dust from his cracked visor. He raised his head. He stared straight into the eyes of the so-called god, and he whispered, "We don't kneel." Corvith tilted his head. "You are alone. Your fleets are ash. Your colonies burn. You cannot win." Min Jae's breath trembled. He was bleeding. His suit alarm screamed warnings. Every bone hurt, but he still smiled. "Humans don't need gods," he said. "We become legends instead." A ripple passed through the Pantheon ranks. Mocking laughter rolled across the battlefield. "A legend," Corvith said. "You are one soldier standing on a dead world." Min Jae lifted a shaking hand. "Not dead," he said softly. "Just waiting." He slammed his palm onto the ground. The planet roared. The sands exploded upward as something massive woke beneath the crust. Metal cracked through rock. Ancient gears screamed to life. Dust storms spun into the sky as a colossal war machine rose from the ruins. A titan of steel and fury. Titan Frame Unit 07 Halcyon, the abandoned human planetary guardian. Corvith staggered back. A human titan still functions? Impossible. Halcyon's eye blazed with blue fire. It stood like a mountain. It breathed like a storm. Min Jae climbed onto its shoulder with the last strength he had left. "You wanted a fight, right?" he whispered. "Let's give you one." The Pantheon charged. Halcyon met them head-on. Metal collided with divine armor in a shockwave that shattered the horizon. Halcyon ripped through the first Asterian warrior, throwing its shattered pieces across the burning sky. Lightning arcs, plasma blasts, and seismic blows filled the battlefield. "Block right." Min Jae shouted through Neuralink bursts. "Core strike. Push forward." Halcyon obeyed with perfect timing, but the Pantheon was strong, far stronger than any living species. One by one, Halcyon's armor plate shattered. Internal systems screamed. The Titan fell to one knee. Corvus stepped forward, spear glowing with world-killing energy. "It ends," he said, raising his weapon. Min Jae's voice cracked, but he did not back away. "You still don't understand." Corvith paused. "Understand what?" Min Jae placed his hand on Halcyon's battered armor. "You think humans fight alone. We don't." He tapped a code on his wrist. 3 short pulses, 3 long pulses, 3 short again. A heartbeat. The sky responded. Clouds tore apart like paper. The air burned with holy blue energy. A sphere the size of a moon slipped through the clouds, glowed with the light of 1 billion memories. The Asterians stared in disbelief. "Not possible," one murmured. "That is—" Corvitha's voice cracked. "No, that weapon was forbidden. Destroyed." Min Jae smiled weakly. "Humans don't destroy our ghosts. We learn from them." The sphere opened like a blooming star. Every panel, every inner surface, every glowing circuit was carved with human names. Soldiers, scientists, children, explorers, everyone humanity had ever lost. Every name was a memory. Every memory was power. The Echo Citadel awakened. A deep hum shook the skies. Energy channels aligned with Min Jae's heartbeat. He stood tall on Halcyon's shoulder. "For Earth," he whispered. "For Soul. For my mother. For every name inside that machine." Corvus screamed, "Stop him." The Pantheon fired everything they had. Beams, spears, celestial flames. But the Citadel glowed brighter than their attacks. It drank their power. It fed on their rage. Min Jae gave the final command. Citadel fire. The beam that erupted was not light. It was not plasma. It was something older. Something made of love, loss, rage, hope. Everything human. A white pillar of memory and fire tore through the sky, striking the battlefield like a divine sword. It vaporized the Pantheon warriors instantly. Their armor melted. Their cores shattered. Corvus stood alone in the blast, screaming in disbelief. "We are gods! You cannot kill us." Min Jae shouted. "Humanity just did." The beam swallowed Corvus whole. Silence followed. Slow. Heavy. Final. The Citadel dimmed, its task complete. It rose slowly back into the sky, drifting toward orbit like a weary guardian returning to its throne. Halcyon collapsed behind Min-Jae, its systems exhausted. Min-Jae knelt beside the Titan's broken armor. "You did well," he whispered. "Thank you." The Titan's eye flickered once, like a smile, then faded. Min-Jae looked to the sky. The citadel pulsed with soft blue light, like a heartbeat answering his own. "Humanity still lives," he said softly. He didn't shout. He didn't cheer. He simply stated a truth the universe could not ignore anymore. A single soldier stood on a dead world, and every star listened, across distant colonies, across deep space stations, across shattered fleets drifting among the void. Humans heard his voice, and they rose. Min-Jae sat on the cracked ground. He breathed slowly. He let the silence settle. In that moment, he was not the last soldier. He was the first spark, the first promise, the first light of a new human age. And for the first time in centuries, the universe understood something terrifying and beautiful. Humanity never dies. It simply starts again.